Well, we are back hearing about the incredible journey that guy's had to this point in his life. And specifically, he's transitioned now. He's sold this incredible company that he founded and built. And he's now sitting here looking for the next opportunity. And so, opportunity has an interesting way of showing up for us. I'm curious, how did some of the new endeavors come up for you? What made you realize that there was something you were looking to do, and how did they start showing up in your life?
I sold the business in 2017. I had an 18-month burnout. I actually ended up doing 21 months. I then handed over to my technical director who took over from me, and he became the VP for Disney Streaming Services in the UK. And I took a year out. But you never actually take a year out when you take a year out, right? So I did a load of traveling with my family and went to some really nice places, did some really nice stuff. All the time was having conversations with people. I ended up investing in a couple of companies and I'm still actively involved with those companies and, taking them through some high growth stage, and trying to help them achieve an exit. And I mentioned strategic coach before, which has been actually I'm going to give them a shout out because they were an important part of what I did. I talked about being highly dyslexic and then in my mid-30s beginning to build my confidence and understanding. I was going into meetings in these big corporate buildings with these high-powered people thinking, I was nervous, right? Nervous as hell. And actually I came out feeling a bit underwhelmed thinking, well, they're not what I expected them to be. I'm no different, and I begin to build my confidence up. That is largely down, I think, to understanding why I was what I was in terms of the dyslexia side of things, but also through strategic coach with the tools that they have, kind of beginning to understand yourself with Colby. We discussed it just before the show started, where, it kind of measures your natural behaviors. And that helps you understand yourself. Unique ability was just a big one for me. I spent a day with a lady called Julia Waller, who's just fantastic. And at the end of 8 hours of questions and discussion, I was completely drained. But what I had at the end of that was a paragraph that described what I'm really good at. And ultimately, it was building uniquely talented teams. And that was all, as I said before, from my experience with Sainsbury's and having to manage all sorts of different people. I'm good at, I think, recognizing other people's unique abilities and understanding where they'd fit around me or around the company that I'm supporting and helping the entrepreneur within that company build their own kind of unique team. So every company I'm involved with, the team is at the center, and the development of the team and the building of the team is at the center of everything that I do, because ultimately I'm not going to make the company successful. They are. And that's kind of how it is really. So, coach was a massive thing for me. And actually I met both my business partners, Gary Fletcher for EHE, Entrepreneurs Help Entrepreneurs, and Dave Sampano for Eterna. I met them both at Strategic Coach in Toronto, meetings at different times, but within 6 months of each other. And actually then we started both businesses just before COVID hit, which was in some ways useful because I was able to build out 2 platforms of both businesses at a time when there was an abundance of engineers available. So in some ways, as horrible as COVID was, it kind of worked in my favor in that regard.
You also supported people who otherwise wouldn't be working because they were available. So it's a bit of a, you not just was it helpful for you in growing 2 new companies, but also for the people that needed the ability to work on a project. It's kind of everyone wins in that scenario.
It does. And both projects were actually started by ex-employees of mine from Cake. So these guys had the kahunas to go out and start their own business. And I always support that. I never, ever, I actually enjoy it when people leave my company to go and start their own company, because I think it's a completely brave and noble thing to do, because you need people like that to build economies and create innovation and change the world. So, I'm always really happy when people leave my companies to go and start their own business. And wherever possible, I stay in touch with them, try and help them, and occasionally employ them. And that's what happened in this case. I employed quite a number of people that I used to work with that, had set their own business up.
That's amazing. Now, Strategic Coach, amazing organization. So shout out to Dan and Babs for what they've built there. And of course, that's really the fundamental way that you and I got connected initially. And we had a great interview on our other program, Wealth Out Bay Street podcast. And at the time, it was around one of these business models that you were focused on with your business partner, Dave. But there's been some change and some pivoting that you mentioned there. So walk us through a little bit about what's the deciding factor on when you need to pivot, and why have you made some of the changes you have in that particular technological structure?
Yeah, out of all the companies that I'm now involved with, this has been the hardest one to get off the ground. But we've continually made progress along the route. So, nothing comes easy, right? And every business I'm involved with has issues. This issue was that, when we launched, the business model was really simple. We built this platform, which I did. The platform's great. And we got patents on the platform, which were, granted in the US. And the tech side worked really well. The plan was, the business model was really to go through, instead of going direct to consumer, which is always difficult, and because it just costs so much money to, get above all the noise that goes on in that marketplace, we thought, okay, we're going to go through local lawyers. So what we tried to do was, most estate planning platforms, in fact, all of them apart from ours, try and bypass local lawyers. So they use technology to marginalize lawyers, and they just maybe have a couple of their own in-house lawyers. That's it. What we try and do is work with local lawyers. So, the platform, we'd engage with a law firm, small law firm typically. And the idea was that they get two types of customers. They get customers that come in and want a will, and they're prepared to pay maybe a couple of $1,000s, maybe more, maybe slightly less, but around about that figure, to go through a process where a lawyer handholds you through that process. It's usually in person, and it's labor intensive, right? And it's expensive because you're dealing directly with a lawyer, or at least a paralegal. But then there's people that can't afford to do that. So they come to the law firm and they go, how much is it to do a will? And they go $2,000, and you go, well, we can't afford that. You say, okay. So the idea was then that the lawyers would refer the customer to our platform, and they would have their own unique URL. So it would be, Turner.legal/Joe Blogs lawyers. And it would be highly personalized to them, but it would also be branded a Turner. So it was a joint kind of branding exercise. And that person then would go through and self-serve. Really easy process, really quick, and quite a bit cheap. And at the end of it, though, the big difference at the end of it is it's still signed off by that local lawyer. And that's really important because, a lot of these platforms produce wills that aren't checked or aren't checked well enough. And actually, you only find out that when you go to court because someone's contesting something, and you find out that actually you haven't dotted the I's and crossed the T's in the right way, and therefore you don't really have a leg to stand on at that point. You lose the case. Whereas, the idea going through a Turner is that you have it checked by your local lawyer who signs it off, and that will stand up in a court of law if it's contested. So it gives people that peace of mind. So that's the big difference. And really, it doesn't cost any more than these other platforms are charging not to use the lawyers. The lawyers benefit out of it because they take the majority of the fee. The platform benefits by taking a small percentage of the fee. All really good in theory, right? And we tried that for 12 to 18 months, and we really worked hard, and lawyers were interested. But the reality was they just didn't refer people in the numbers to our platform that we were expecting, needed, or hoped for. So we had to change our thinking. So we still want to use the local lawyers, But this time we're going to do the marketing. So we become the marketing platform as well as the processing platform, but we still get it signed off by a local lawyer. That required a complete rethink in our model, in the way that we dealt with things on the platform. So we had to change technically the workflow, not massively, but enough that it took a while to do. And we're now going to market with this revised strategy where we take areas within states and we hit that area and we go to local companies with maybe 400 employees. 70% of people who should have wills as adults in the US do not have wills or trusts. So it's a big market. So we can offer discounted wills through companies. The company benefits because they're offering something that is useful and needed for their employees. And we benefit because we get that business. And the lawyers benefit because they get the business without having to do any of the marketing or any of the referring. So it's a different model, and we are rolling that one out now. So that was a really major pivot that cost us 18 months of time. But the signs are good. We're beginning to roll it out and it's beginning to work really quite well now.
Well, I think a couple of interesting things that I heard in there is number one, you gave yourself a period of time to test the market before you were able to have good decisions with your business partners about when it made sense to pivot and what that pivot is. But the key thing I really heard you identify is that you had to rethink your thinking. You had to rethink the business or rethink the business model. You had to rethink your thinking. And the result of that rethinking caused some changes in the business. So I think that's really important. And when we come back after these next messages, I'm excited to dive into some of the new innovations that you're focusing on with some of your other incredible projects.